The note was taped to my suitcase like a bandage over a wound that wasn't mine. "Want to live here? We only have the garage." I stood in the quiet glare of the porch light, the night air smelling like wet grass and cold metal, and felt something unexpected bloom in my chest. Relief. I had been bracing for this, the way you brace the body of a patient before the pain hits. "My name is Beverly. I'm 67, and I've been a nurse for 43 years. I've sat beside more endings than I can count, yet nothing prepared me for the beginning that letter forced into my hands." It was just past 9:15 p.m. when I lifted the envelope and slid the paper free, the tidy curves of Lillian's handwriting neat as a scalpel. "Beverly, we've decided this arrangement isn't working. The garage is available. We'll discuss rent later." I read it twice, then folded it as carefully as a discharge summary and slipped it into my pocket. Around me, the house I had helped pay for exhaled silence. Usually the television murmured sports highlights, or Lillian's voice floated down the hallway, polished and performative. But tonight the rooms were closed and mute, like a stage after the audience has gone home. I looked at my 3 battered suitcases, my life reduced to corners and zippers, and smiled, not because it didn't hurt, it did. But clarity has its own kind of anesthesia. I lifted my phone, thumb hovering over a number I'd saved weeks ago, the way you memorize the code to a crash cart and pray you won't need it. "Sunset Gardens Apartments, this is Maria," a cheerful voice answered on the second ring. "Hello, Maria," I said, steadying my breath. "This is Beverly Thompson. I'm calling to confirm the move-in for apartment 215. She didn't hesitate, didn't ask why my voice shook. "Of course, Mrs. Thompson. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Will you need our movers?" I looked at the suitcases, at the small overnight bag that used to be my mother's, its handle polished by decades of goodbyes. "No, thank you," I said, and a lighter smile found me. "I have everything I need." Through the living room window, a curtain stirred. Lillian. I could almost feel her watching for a collapse, a plea, a bargain she could win. "She wants the lesson to belong to me," I thought, closing my trunk. But lessons are funny things. They land where they're earned. The taxi arrived at 9:30 p.m., headlights washing the grass silver. The driver lifted my bags with the soft grunt of someone who knows weight by instinct. I took one last look at the front door, the wreath I'd hung in spring tilting like a crooked crown, and slid into the back seat. As we pulled away, the house shrank into the rear window until it was only a square of warm light and a shadow in the glass. I didn't wave. The body knows when a chapter has lost its pulse. Freedom can be a whisper. Mine came as the hum of the highway and the clean, unpromising brightness of a lobby at 9:55 p.m. Wax tile, pale walls, a potted plant pretending to be a tree. By 10:40 p.m., my keys were in my palm, cool and certain. Apartment 215 smelled like new paint and possibility. I set my mother's bag on the counter, ran the tap until the water turned truly cold, and drank. My back ached the way backs ache after 12 hours, but something inside me, something that had been hunching for months, uncurled. I hadn't been passive, only patient. In March, I'd come home early and heard Lillian upstairs, her voice high and confiding. "She's becoming impossible, Sandra. I'm looking into assisted living, the state-run kind." The words had cut cleanly, not like surprise, but like confirmation. I'd started taking notes after that. Dates, envelopes, the rhythm of packages arriving, the way she intercepted the mail and filed my contributions under burdens. In a drawer, she had a list of incidents she planned to remember, falls I hadn't had, stoves I hadn't left on. "If you want to move a mountain," I'd told a frightened daughter once at 2 a.m., "you start with a teaspoon." I started with teaspoons, watching, recording, waiting. At 11:15 p.m., I sat on the balcony with a mug of tap water cooling in my hands and the courtyard below stitched in soft yellow light. In the distance, someone laughed, the sound bright and ordinary. I thought about the garage, how it would smell in summer, hot rubber and old rain, and felt gratitude like a small flame. Lillian believed eviction would break me. She didn't understand the mercy of being sent where you were already headed. Tomorrow, I would call my son. Tomorrow, I would begin the work of telling the truth, slowly enough that it could be heard. For now, I did the simplest nursing I know. I put myself to bed. By 6:30 a.m., the light in apartment 215 slipped across the floor like a soft promise, and I drank my coffee with both hands around the mug as if warmth could be cupped and kept. 3 days had passed in a hush of small victories. Fresh sheets, a quiet clock, the first night of sleep that didn't feel borrowed. And then my phone rang. Marcus. I stared at his name for a heartbeat and answered, "Good morning, sweetheart," before the dread could build its scaffolding. He exhaled as if my voice released something inside him. "Mom, Lillian said you left without telling anyone. She said you were upset about the arrangement." I made my breath even, the way you do when a frightened patient needs your steadiness. "She left me a note at 9:15 p.m. offering the garage," I said, and because facts are anchors, I added, "We can talk about arrangements when truth has a chair at the table." There was a rustle then, the soft choreography of someone hovering near him. Lillian's voice floated through like perfume. "Marcus, don't let her start with money. We already discussed," and he moved farther from her. You could hear it in the way his words deepened. "Mom, what exactly are you saying?" I walked to the small balcony where the morning smelled of damp earth and laundry soap and said gently, "I'm saying you should look at your credit card statements from the last 6 months. All of them." He tried a laugh that didn't carry. "Why?" I said the number softly, a diagnosis delivered with care. "Because someone has been spending roughly $1,500 each month on cosmetics, clothing, and spa packages while telling you money is tight." The silence was absolute, like the stunned quiet after a heart monitor steadies. "That's not," he began, but the unconvincing rose in his throat and fell. Lillian's voice cut in, sharp and sweet. "Beverly, you're clearly exhausted. At your age, working those long shifts," and I held the line with a nurse's smile no one could see. "Hello, Lillian. I'm doing well, thank you. Maria at Sunset Gardens has made me feel very welcome." She went quiet for half a breath. Marcus whispered, "Mom?" And I chose one more stitch of truth. There's an account in the name Lillian Thompson linked to an old address of mine. Identity games inside a family are still crimes once they step into banks. The silence changed then. You can hear a man step onto the ledge between belief and knowing. Lillian flared, "Hang up, Marcus. She's paranoid." And I said, "Check the mail today around 4 p.m. Look for envelopes from Capital One. Also, ask State University for a transcript. If Lillian's business degree is real, they'll verify it." The phone filled with the sound of someone's certainty cracking. "I'll look," he said, voice low. "That's all I'm asking," I replied, and before I hung up, I gave him the only map that matters. The children can visit any time. There's a fold-out couch that fits 2 small dreamers, and a grandmother who makes cocoa at 8 p.m. By 7:10 p.m., a photo pinged onto my screen. A statement photographed under kitchen light. $8,000 spelled in numbers and dread. "Found in her jewelry box," Marcus texted. "How many more?" I answered the way you answer a man finding his own pulse. "Enough to tell a story. Check tomorrow's mail before she does." The next evening at 6:45 p.m., the second message arrived with a stack of envelopes and a line that read like a whispered confession. I called State. No record of her name, any of them. I sat very still. the apartment humming with the soft pragmatism of a new refrigerator, and felt something old inside me loosen like a knot releasing. We spoke at 7:30 p.m. His voice grated raw. 4 cards, Mom. 4. Balances adding up to $23,000. Hotels, restaurants I've never seen, gas stations nowhere near us, and emails, brochures for assisted living. She was going to write a story about you losing yourself so she could put you away. I closed my eyes against the sting and said what love requires when it wants to be useful. You document everything. You change every password tonight. You pull your credit. Then you decide what kind of father you want to be in the light of this truth. He breathed in, unsteady, a man measuring the height of a new road. I don't know what to do, he whispered, and I told him, you do. You just haven't said it aloud yet. The next morning arrived hushed and golden, the kind of morning that pretends everything is fine. I sat on my balcony at 7 a.m., coffee cooling between my hands, when my phone buzzed again. Marcus's voice was quieter this time, scraped raw from a sleepless night. She's been lying about everything, Mom. Everything. I could hear the disbelief wrapped around exhaustion, the sound a man makes when the person he loved becomes a stranger in daylight. I found receipts, he said, his breath uneven. Hotel stays, spa weekends, restaurant bills for 2. There's another name on some of them, a man. She told me it was business networking. I closed my eyes. I'd seen the look on too many faces. Patience realizing betrayal doesn't always arrive with bruises. Sometimes it's just a whisper that turns everything inside out. I'm sorry, I said softly, but you needed to know. He was quiet for a long moment. The worst part, he said finally, is I probably would have believed her about you. If she said you were slipping, that you forgot things. I was working so much, so tired, I'd have believed her. His voice cracked on the word believed. I let him breathe through the guilt. You trusted your wife, I said. That's not a crime. Deceit doesn't make you blind. It just moves faster than love sometimes. Silence, then a shuddering exhale. I checked her computer, Mom. She had emails printed out about nursing home admissions, notes about your memory decline, plans to stage little incidents. He paused. She was really going to do it. She was going to have you committed. I gripped the railing, the early sun warm on my knuckles. Even knowing it, hearing it confirmed, still hollowed me out. She underestimated you, he said bitterly. She thought you'd just fade. I smiled faintly into my coffee. She underestimated both of us. We talked until nearly 8:30 a.m., him pacing his kitchen, me tracing circles on the mug's rim. What do I do now? He asked finally. You keep records, I said. Every statement, every lie you can prove. You change your passwords, call your bank, and then you protect those children. You don't have to destroy her, Marcus. The truth will do that for you. He was silent for a long while. She tried to erase you, he said quietly, and all she did was show me who you really are. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to add. Some truths only need to be witnessed, not spoken. It was almost noon when it happened. I was pushing my grocery cart across the parking lot, sunlight glinting off car hoods, when a familiar voice hissed behind me, "You vindictive old witch!" I turned, and there she was, Lillian. Her perfect composure was gone. Her hair was a tangled knot, her eyes red-rimmed, her lipstick smeared like a bruise she'd painted herself. "Hello, Lillian," I said evenly, setting a carton of milk into the trunk. "I hope your day's improving." Her laugh was brittle. "Don't you dare act innocent. You've been poisoning Marcus against me with your lies." The heat in her voice drew stares from passing shoppers, curiosity flickering like camera flashes. I kept my tone calm, the way you do when a patient fights a sedative. "If the truth feels poisonous," I said, "perhaps it's because it's finally working its way through." Her face went crimson. "You think you've won something? You think you're clever? Those credit cards were business expenses. You wouldn't understand ambition. You've spent your life cleaning up after people better than you." The words hit like thrown glass, but I'd been in harder rooms. "And the college degree you lied about?" I asked softly. "The nursing home brochures? The list of fake incidents?" She froze, color draining from her face. "You broke into my things." "I lived in that house," I replied. "I saw what you left lying around." Her breath came faster. "You can't prove anything." "I don't have to," I said. "Marcus already did." For a second, the air between us went thin and dangerous. She took a step forward, eyes blazing. "You won't see those children again," she spat. "I'll make sure of it." I stepped closer until I could see the crack of fear behind her fury. "If you try to hurt them, or him, you'll find out exactly how many people a registered nurse knows who deal with truth for a living." By then, a small crowd had gathered. An elderly couple, a young man with a basket of groceries, a security guard walking briskly toward us. "Ma'am," he said to Lillian, "I'm going to need you to calm down." She whirled on him, voice trembling. "She's harassing me. She's stalking my family." The guard's eyes moved to me, and before I could speak, the older woman from the couple said, "I saw the whole thing. The lady with the cart was just minding her business. The blonde one came out shouting first." Lillian's face crumpled, rage bleeding into humiliation. "You people don't understand," she said, her voice cracking. "She's trying to ruin my life." The guard's tone softened but firmed. "Ma'am, please leave, or I'll have to escort you off the property." "Fine," she snapped, grabbing her keys. "But this isn't over, Beverly. You haven't won." I watched her drive away, her car veering too fast, the sunlight flashing off its windows like a warning. The parking lot fell back into its normal rhythm. Carts rolling, doors slamming, the world forgetting almost instantly. But I knew the storm wasn't finished. The look in Lillian's eyes had changed. Fear is unpredictable when it runs out of control. And by the time my phone rang the next morning at 6:30 a.m., I already knew it would be Marcus calling, voice shaking, asking me to come home. When I pulled into the driveway at 6:55 a.m., the same one where my suitcases had once sat like discarded secrets, Marcus was already on the porch, his shoulders slumped, his face pale and sleepless. The early light made him look younger and older all at once, a man who'd finally stopped pretending. I parked beside the curb, turned off the engine, and walked toward him. "She's gone," he said before I could ask. "Packed 2 bags, took some jewelry and about $300 in cash, left around midnight." I stood next to him, the wood of the steps cool through my shoes, the air heavy with the scent of rain and regret. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. However cruel she'd been, endings always ache. He shook his head. "Don't be. When I saw the empty closet this morning, I felt something I didn't expect. Relief." He looked up at me, eyes rimmed red. "Last night, after your run-in with her, she came home wild, screaming that you'd humiliated her, that you were poisoning me. She demanded that I choose between you and her." He laughed softly, brokenly. "I told her there was no choice to make. A wife who loves her husband doesn't destroy his mother. A mother who loves her son doesn't lie to him. She didn't like that answer." He ran a hand over his face. "She started throwing things, saying I'd ruined her life. Then she said something I can't get out of my head. If you're too stupid to see she's the problem, then maybe you deserve to lose everything." And she laughed. Mom. She actually laughed. His voice dropped. I think she meant the money. I felt the chill before he spoke the words. "She emptied our savings account. Nearly $12,000 gone overnight. I checked this morning." I reached for his hand, squeezed it. "You'll rebuild," I said softly. "You always do." He looked at me then, the way a boy looks at the person who first taught him to trust the world. "You know what's strange?" he said. "I'm not angry. I'm just done. Finally done." We sat in silence for a while, the neighborhood waking around us, Mrs. Henderson bending for her newspaper, the sound of a lawn sprinkler sputtering to life, 2 kids biking down the street. The world kept moving, as if it hadn't noticed his life had cracked open. "The kids don't know yet," Marcus said after a while. Emma asked where Mommy was, and I told her she went to visit Aunt Sarah. Tommy's quiet, too quiet. I felt my throat tighten. "They'll need time, but they have you. They'll be okay." He nodded, his voice thick. "Will you help me? With them?" "You don't even have to ask," I said. "You're my son. They're my world." His eyes softened with gratitude and shame. "You were right about her from the start, weren't you?" I hesitated, then nodded slightly. "I saw signs, but I hoped I was wrong. I wanted you to be happy." "You tried to warn me," he whispered. "I thought you were just being overprotective." I smiled faintly. Maybe I was. Sometimes love looks like overprotection until the truth arrives. He leaned back against the porch post, staring at nothing. "She'll try to come back," he said. "When the money's gone, when that man she's seeing gets tired of her, she'll come back with tears and apologies." "And what will you do?" I asked quietly. "Nothing," he said. "The locks are already changed. I called a lawyer last night. I'm filing for divorce on Monday. He says with the fraud and the abandonment, I'll get full custody." For the first time that morning, I felt something warm. Hope, small and trembling but alive. "You're stronger than you think," I said. "You always were." The front door creaked then, and Emma appeared in her pajamas, hair a tangled halo, eyes wide with confusion. "Daddy, why are you outside? Is Grandma Beverly here?" Marcus smiled and scooped her up. "Good morning, sweetheart. Yes, Grandma's here. We're going to make pancakes." Her face brightened instantly. "With chocolate chips?" she asked. "Of course," I said. "But we should check if Tommy's awake first." She grabbed my hand, small fingers warm against mine. "Grandma Beverly, I missed you. The house was sad when you were gone." My heart clenched. "I missed you too, love. But I'm here now." Later that morning, while the smell of pancakes filled the kitchen and the children's laughter drifted from the living room, Marcus and I stood side by side at the counter. "I owe you more than an apology," he said quietly. "You saved yourself, but you also saved us. You didn't destroy her. You just told the truth and let her do the rest." I looked at him, my grown son, and realized that the little boy who once cried over scraped knees had become a man who finally understood pain in full color. "I didn't want revenge," I said. "I just wanted peace." He nodded slowly. "Then you've already won." But peace, I knew, isn't always quiet. At 1:45 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message from Lillian. "This isn't over, Beverly. You haven't won anything." I showed it to Marcus. He stared at it for a long time, then deleted it from my hand. "She still thinks it's a game," he said. I smiled faintly. "Let her. The game only works if you keep playing." Outside, the children were laughing, chasing bubbles across the yard. The sound floated through the open window like a hymn. For the first time in years, it felt like home again. Not the house, but the people in it. 3 months later, the rhythm of our lives had softened into something ordinary and whole again. The sun spilled through the same kitchen windows that once framed so much tension, but now the air smelled of pancakes and crayons instead of fear. At 7:30 a.m., Emma sat at the table working on her spelling homework, her tongue poking from the corner of her mouth in concentration, while Tommy practiced piano in the living room, the same few notes of Clair de Lune, tumbling over themselves with shy determination. Marcus stood by the stove, pouring coffee into 2 mugs, his shoulders relaxed for the first time in years. "She hasn't tried to contact you again?" I asked quietly. He shook his head. "The lawyer said the divorce went through without her contesting. Full custody. It's done." I let out a slow breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "I heard she moved 3 states away," he added, "with the man she'd been seeing, but apparently that didn't last long either." I nodded, not out of satisfaction, but closure. Some endings don't require applause, they just need silence. After breakfast, Marcus headed to work, his new job, one with better hours and fair pay. I stayed behind to help with the children's morning routine, tying shoes, finding missing notebooks, smoothing their hair before school. "Grandma," Emma said as she hugged me at the door, "are you coming for dinner tonight?" "Wouldn't miss it," I smiled, and she grinned before racing after her brother. The house fell quiet, the kind of quiet that feels clean. I stood in that stillness for a moment, realizing how peace doesn't announce itself. It just moves in quietly and rearranges the furniture. That afternoon, I returned to my apartment at Sunset Gardens. The walls still smelled faintly of fresh paint. The curtains swayed in a soft breeze, and the balcony plants I'd kept half alive through chaos were now blooming. I poured myself tea and thought about how life has a strange way of restoring balance. Not through revenge, but through truth, given time to breathe. I'd learned that silence can be more powerful than shouting, that dignity can be a louder weapon than fury. Lillian had wanted to make me small, invisible, contained in a garage, but she didn't realize that you can't diminish someone who has already survived worse things quietly, every night in a hospital room. As dusk deepened around 6:45 p.m., I drove back to the house. The children were in the yard chasing fireflies, their laughter bubbling like water over stones. Marcus was on the porch, book in hand, smiling at something unseen. "Long day?" I asked. "The good kind," he said. "The kind that ends with you here." Inside, the walls still bore faint shadows of what used to be, the indent where a framed diploma once hung that never existed, the dent in the door frame from the night everything fell apart. But there was warmth now, and music and the soft clatter of dishes that meant life was happening again. "Do you ever think about her?" he asked after a moment. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not with hate. Just a kind of distant sadness for someone who thought control was the same thing as love." He nodded. "I don't hate her either. I just don't miss her." Later, after the kids were tucked in and Marcus had gone to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the clock ticking softly at 9:15 p.m., the same hour my life had once changed under a porch light. I pulled out a letter from my bag, one I had written but never sent. It began with "Dear Lillian" and ended with "Thank you for setting me free." I'd written it the night I moved into apartment 215, when anger was still fresh, but now it read like a relic from another lifetime. I folded it carefully, not to send, but to keep as a reminder of everything I'd reclaimed, my voice, my peace, my place in the world. Through the window, the moon rose over the quiet neighborhood, casting the same soft light that once fell over 3 suitcases on a lawn. Except this time, it wasn't an ending. It was proof that survival can look gentle, that strength can sound like a grandmother's lullaby instead of a war cry. I thought of all the families I'd seen unravel in hospital corridors and how I used to believe cruelty was something distant, confined to strangers' lives. But cruelty can live under your own roof, disguised as politeness and smiles. And even then, kindness isn't weakness. It's armor. You just have to remember how to wear it. So, to whoever's listening now, maybe from another kitchen, another life, you don't have to fight cruelty with cruelty. Sometimes the quiet truth, held long enough, will undo every lie for you, Sometimes walking away is the loudest way to win. And sometimes, when the people who tried to break you finally disappear, what's left isn't emptiness. It's peace, waiting patiently for you to come home. If you felt something in my story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I love knowing how far a story of strength can travel. Thank you for staying with me until the end.